that's going to be able to essentially do the work for you. You say, hey, here's my unit. This is the size of this. Can you verify that this is the correct way, right? And then you'll get the correct answer at that point. I'm going to pass these out for you guys now that you guys seen it, and I'll let you guys test these out too. So just grab one, whatever, just pass them down. And I'll let you guys, you know, if you guys want to try this out too, if you have some time, you're more than welcome to. Yep, absolutely. All right, so I mean, you know, the point to this point, the point I'm making is springs, right? Springs are huge. Springs is the ultimate goal. Springs is the option that you want to go with if you can, right? Sometimes, again, homeowners say, hey, I want the cheapest thing, or I don't want you to do anything because I don't want to spend any more money, but you want to do something for them to try to remedy the situation, and you don't want to have to lose a lot of money out of pocket, so you might go with some neoprene pads or some rubber pads just to be able to put that in there to help them out. But you know, essentially, you want to convince the homeowner of the value that they're spending on when they go with springs. And again, I just addressed sizing. So you know, sizing. You know, again, the dividing of the four corners. It's a pretty simple concept, but all you really need is, you know, the spec sheet. Sometimes you get the model number, serial number. Go with whoever you guys are buying from, and just say, hey, here's my model number, serial number. Can you guys look this up and see, what the weight is, and you know what size you need. Okay, so rubber and cork, the oldest form, like I said, you know, the one thing that Mason does have is, you know, we do use high quality rubber, and the reason that matters is because there's less fillers, so there's less more things, right? Rubber is going to be the most effective in its use, but if you add other things that aren't necessarily rubber, just because you want them to be able to fill it to save money, they're going to break down more, right? There's more stuff in there. There's more stuff that's going to break down. It's going to rip. Then at that point, you're spending money twice. So buy a better product. So you guys have the neoprene mounts. These are going to obviously work better than pads. There's a little more deflection, right? Because there's a little more product, more rubber, so therefore more neoprene. So you're going to be able to have more movement. So it's going to take away a little, more of the vibration and noise than those are going to take away. Another thing about our NDA mounts is they have bolts on them. So what you could do is you could actually put this under, say, a condensing unit, and then you could actually bolt the condensing unit down to this. Or if you have a SIG compressor and the compressor has the feet holes or whatever, you can actually screw this to the bottom of it, obviously getting the proper size for whatever the compressor is that you have. So being able to bolt it down obviously is going to make a difference. And also sometimes you need to bolt it down depending on whatever the rules are, whatever the code's going to call for. Sometimes there's earthquake rating things that you got to do. I mean, it just depends on what area what you're doing. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about. Or does anybody have questions so far? I know I talk kind of fast too, so you guys slow me down if you need to throw your catalog at me. Okay, if you guys don't have any questions, I'll go with, kind of more or less, now that we kind of know, the options as far as neoprene rubber, we have spring, then we talk about the application, right? So this right here is a neoprene hanger mount. So it's a neoprene mount, but it's meant for hanger. So you can use this stuff called Unistrut. It's essentially thread. It's just threaded, all thread. It's like a threaded, huge long bolt in a sense that you would say, strap to the top of whatever, your beams or whatever, right? And then at that point, you would have to hang it down, and you would run it through here, and then you would run the weight so that the neoprene pad is taking the weight, and then have the thread go through and hold whatever it is that you're hanging. So now this is actually absorbing whatever it is that you're hanging from it. This is, obviously there's no cheap pad version because you can hang from pads, so this would be the most affordable option. So you have a neoprene hanging mount, and then I already talked about neoprene, mounts like on surface, and then after that, then you get the springs again, ultimate goal, right? And then you have the spring hanging mount. So when you go from something that you could spend a little more money on to get a better result, is you'd want to go with something like this, a spring like this, and we have different options with different deflection. If you say, hey, I need to have 30-degree deflection due to earthquake, ratings or whatever, we have options for all that stuff. So I mean, we have everything from just a simple basic application to a full seismic rated application. So whatever it is that you guys maybe have it. This is another spring mount, obviously lighter. I'll pass these around as well. These are a thicker spring, obviously a heavier weight. Let's check this out. And then when you're talking about just sitting on the floor, did everybody check these out? Everybody get to see those?
Yes.
All right, cool. You just throw them out there. Yeah. And then here we are. Here's a spring mount that sits on the floor that has a bolt as well, right? So you can do kind of what the ND8 does there. You can bolt it down, but you could also mount it. It has screw holes on the bottom, so you can actually mount it to the floor as well. So that's the application that needs to be. And then these two here, this is what maybe you'd use for like a package unit, something a little heavier, something a little bigger. You can bolt it down. Obviously, it has a rubber pad on the bottom, but it also has a screw hole, so you can mount it down to the floor. And then this is obviously for something a lot heavier, seismic rated. So you have a mount, but you actually have neoprene grommets here to be able to give it some deflection to move. So if there is a slight earthquake or even a heavy earthquake, depending on whatever you need, you could actually use that deflection to be able to save you from breaking anything, whatever it is it's mounted to or the equipment itself. So let me pass this. So, I mean, I think more or less, I think you guys are kind of understanding where I'm getting at. I mean, whether you hang it, whether you mount it, whether you're just sitting in an attic, if it's a furnace, you'll see on the front of the catalog the IMF mount, which are the little small springs. You can see a furnace and a coil laid in the attic there. I mean, that's what you would do. You just whatever get the total weight of whatever that coil and that furnace would be, you would divide that by 4, and you'd put those springs in. You wouldn't have to strap it down. All you do is put it in there. Because it's properly sized, it's going to be able to absorb that, and you're not going to have to worry about it falling off, right? Because it's done right. But if the spring is too light, what's going to happen is going to completely compress, and then at that point you're defeating the purpose. But if the spring is too rigid and too hard, what's going to happen is, it's almost like putting it on a piece of metal, right? You're not going to be able to get any deflection, right? So because of the fact that that spring is overrated for the weight of whatever the furnace and coil are. Some of the other products that you guys have passing around, you'll see out here. I mean, from everything from, again, hanging big fan coils to compressors to packages. I mean, whatever it is that you're hanging or you're sitting on top, there's an option for it. And what I always tell, contractors is think of it as a safety net, right? You could have an issue, you might have an issue, you might not, but if you always apply that thought process to every job and just make sure that you have that peace of mind, you're going to be able to have a lot less callbacks. You're going to have a lot less issues, and less callbacks is obviously more money for you, right? Because the more callbacks you have, it's more time wasted, more gas you're going to waste. Gas isn't cheap. That you're gonna have to go back out and deal with. So, the goal ultimately is to get the job done right the first time, and not have to go back again to do it. Again, springs and pads are the ultimate solution, but again, it's going to depend on the application. So don't, even though I tell you that springs are the ultimate application, sometimes springs aren't going to fit, right? So springs aren't going to work. Sometimes all you can do is pads. So I mean, don't set it in your brain that you always have to push the customer to springs if you can't do it because that's going to be the best solution. But in some scenarios you might be stuck with having to just use pads because of the lack of room or whatever you have. The other thing, and I didn't. This is probably not going to run into it initially a lot, unless you get into like the bigger commercial stuff. But we also have like flexible hose connectors, and it's the same thing in a sense of like, say, imagine you're at a brewery or something, right? And they have some big tanks and some big pumps, and whenever the pumps turn on, there's obviously some movement in there, and sometimes there's rigid pipe that going from container to container. And in those scenarios, sometimes those turn on, and over the years they keep doing that and then there's this big shock that happens to these pipes, and they end up breaking and they're cracking over time. And what happens in that scenario, obviously they need to leak. Imagine a winery with some really expensive wine, and then that cracks and their wine all spills. That's could be hundreds of thousands of dollars lost. A good commercial contractor is going to go and sell something like a SafeFlex, something like a flexible hose connector for them to be able to prevent that vibration, that movement from cracking anything. And again, that's that peace of mind that you're installing into the customer's, building or whatever, their home, to be able to make sure you have that safety net to make sure that you guys aren't going to have any issues in the future. So a lot of guys will be reactive, and they'll wait till the customer will say, hey, I'm having an issue, and then they'll fix it. But I think you're going to be able to Will be a lot more successful if you're proactive, right? And if you know that those are issues that happen, and you're always on top of it, and you're always offering the best package in a whole for whatever it is that you're installing. Does anybody have any questions? Let's go ahead.
Cost. Average home, 5-ton unit, to put some springs on the units, what kind of money are we talking? Can't be that much, surely.
Yeah, I mean,
Ballpark.
it's hard for me to say just because I know our cost to price a Rolando, and for me to just give you a price, it's tough.
I'm just talking ballpark, yeah.
I mean,
I'm just curious.
I'll say
Hundreds of dollars,
for
thousands?
like a furnace application. Say you spend like maybe $30 a spring on these, whatever. The contractor will spend $30 a spring.
Why that contractor just do it to anyone?
Right. Exactly.
I mean,
Right. If that's gonna make you lose the job,
You've
if
got
you're
insurance.
yeah, if you're gonna lose a job over of a small amount, then you're probably not.
Contractors,
Yeah.
they're the cheapest bastards God put on earth. Oops, cheapest buggers God put on earth. Really, they are. If they can save $5, they will, but why wouldn't you do it? Save you any potential problems down the road for noise and vibration. Anyway, that's just me.
Yeah, it's just peace of
Great
mind.
question, great comment, great question. When we're putting springs or vibration isolations, just think of the application. So